Hello and welcome to a Talking Points live interview with Hakob Astabatsyan, the CEO and co-founder of Synthflow. Thank you for joining us. I'm Dave Michaels from Talking Points, and I'm going to bring Hakob out just a second. I just want to kind of talk a little bit about how this, we all know that AI is changing everything, every industry, everybody's becoming inundated with AI. There's a lot of confusing messages out there, so I think this is really a very interesting and exciting opportunity to hear from one of the movers and shakers of the industry, because Synthflow is definitely making a big impact. Small company, young company, we're going to find out about that. So without further ado, let me bring on, there he is. Hello, Hakob.
Hello.
Welcome.
Hi, Dave. Thanks for having me here.
It's fantastic to have you here. So I've got a couple of really good, tough questions for you. But before we get to those, perhaps you can just explain in your words what Synthflow is.
Yeah, sure. So great to be here. So Synthflow is a voice AI platform, or in other words, we also call it an operating system for companies to build voice AI agents. And you can think about it as like an AI contact center that you can easily deploy live in the real life to take calls on the phone, both inbound and outbound, and basically also do tasks after that.
I'm really glad you didn't say Synthflow is an AI company, because everyone, I mean, Walmart is an AI company now. So everyone's an AI company. So you're specifically dealing with the AI in calls,
Exactly.
and the killer use case is customer service, which is why we're talking.
Yes.
So one more question on kind of intro here is, why? I mean, you are a young, healthy young person. Why did you, I guess, about 3 years ago, almost 3 years ago, decide to create Synthflow?
Yeah, it's a very good question. So, like the way the product it is right now that we offer to customers, it was not the original idea. So the idea has evolved a bit over the time. And back in the day, what we built actually was a no-code layer on top of the LLMs. It was in early 2023 when the first, I would say, performing model of GPT was launched, and we built on top of that. And the idea was to bring this mod to business users, right? These LLMs, and put them in a context, right, with integrations, etc., so that they can actually get value out of it. But it was based on the text, right? And when we were working on this, we realized, okay, what's the next modality of that? And we realized, okay, after text comes voice. And then when we started working on the voice, we realized how complicated this problem is actually to make AI speak like a human on the phone, right? Inbound, outbound, and then bring that conversation to some fruitful outcome. And then even more than that, there's some RPA involved after that, right? Basically doing a task, right? Because calls in business context, they always have a purpose, right? Like scheduling an appointment, resolving a ticket, answering a question, right? So, and then you have to kind of integrate in the ecosystem of the company so that what happens here is actually fruitful at the end of the day. But then we started working on the voice, and it turned out very complicated problem because AI in the early stages, the latency was very high. It was like 1 or 2 seconds. It means imagine talking like right now when we talk, we have 400 milliseconds latency humans. That's why our interruptions are so smooth when we conversate. However, with AI, it was like 2 seconds, so it was impossible actually to have that conversation. And then another problem were interruptions, right? Like AI would stop and then it felt weird. You would stop and then the call would break basically. And wide array of problems, right? And then there was like background noises and so on and so forth, like capturing the emails and numbers, all all this stuff, LLMs hallucinating, and the list grew. The problems was growing, and then we realized, okay, we have to focus on this problem. We have to solve this. But we need to choose our battles, and we chose voice AI. And since then, we've been working on this hard problem.
Well, I'm a little older than you, and I cut my teeth on the first generation of IVRs, and so we were, people asked me, what do I do for a living? And nobody knew what an IVR was, so I would explain, when you push 1 for this and 2 for that, and at first, when I described it that way, people were, oh, it's great because I can get my, simple questions, my account balance, whatever, simple questions answered. After about a year or so later, I would answer, what I do, and I would describe that, and they say, oh, we hate you. I want to get to an operator. I hate that type of technology. And so this was I'm going to say the late 90s when I was doing this. And so let me ask you, because you're automating customer service. So my question really is, can automated customer service be a good thing? And give us your take on that.
Yeah, it's a very good point, right? Because the entire purpose of kind of advocating and building and deploying this new technology is just to replace the IVR trees of the past, right? So they worked, right? In some situations they worked, but it was not the experience that many customers would want to have, right? You mentioned it also, so like frustrating, etc. But with the emergence of these LLMs, suddenly there was this opportunity to make that conversations human-like, so that it just enhancing the experience, right? So it was not only like having AI do things that were not possible to be done. I will deep dive into that a bit later. But it was also enhancing the experience, right? What you are going, similar to GPT, right? Before that, you would have to go on Google and compile a research. Now you just write it, and it just, you could still do that job, but it just shortens the time, it enhances the experience, and you just have this super nice journey with that product, right? And similar thing is with LLMs, because they are interactive, they can conversate, they can divert, and there are also different, the voices have improved over time really massively, so that they sound like human-like. And the whole idea was that, okay, now we can put that on the phone so that humans have this great experience actually talking to AI. So that at least for me, for us, that has been the primary motivation and reason. Of course, we can always talk about ROE, etc. And if you want to build a business, you have to think about these things. But the primary motivation and excitement has been enhancing the people's experience with this.
Now you're describing. There we go. You are describing automating an aspect of customer service, and customer service is a complex, one of those things that just is huge and complicated. And now the industry is embracing what they call CX, which is even bigger and more complicated. So there's lots of vendors involved here, and you being a young new company is probably not one of them. And when I'm referring to an incumbent company or a prospect, they've got some sort of complicated solution for customer service already. So question for you is, why would a prospect go to a company like Synthflow as opposed to one of their incumbent providers that are part of that CS solution today?
Yeah, it's also a very good question. And just the simple answer is that because we offer something that they don't, right? Ultimately, all incumbents, right, they have hundreds of product lines and already existing technologies, and most of them are built on NLP/NLU technology, which is also has its place in the market. Sometimes for some particular tasks of capturing specific information, NLP/NLU can be useful, and it's even cheaper in some cases. But it takes forever to implement, and hundreds of caveats. The experience is really bad for the customer, and so on. So this is just an alternative to that. This is a new technology. It's like it's having a real-time conversation plus the capabilities of AI, like is by tenfold more, right, or better. Basically, you can cover and create use cases nowadays with this new technology that was just science fiction before, right? And I'm talking about like complicated agentic teams, right? You create different agents that have different roles and they routing to each other, and then information gets updated like in CRMs, and then you can create a very long workflows here. Actually, AI doing an end-to-end work, right? And this was not possible before,
Right.
and many incumbents actually they also have these agentic components, but not as an end-to-end solution here that's versatile and gives this full experience of LLMs, but is rather an in-between thing. And we will see how the market turns out, but this is what we're seeing. And very often when I talk to our customers, it takes us even 15, 20 minutes to actually uncover what's under the hood, right, here and there, and being transparent what they're actually buying, right? And that's kind of what's the market is maturing now. So
I'm impressed you said under the hood.
Yeah.
I thought you might say the bonnet, but
Yeah.
but you're actually mostly in North America these days, right? Where's headquarters and where's your primary business?
Yeah. So our primary business, we're based in Germany, in Berlin, but we also have almost, I would say, half of the team based in the US. Yeah.
Okay. So also when you were answering that last question about the stack here, the customer service solution, you got me a little nervous. You said things that make my blood pressure go up, right? And so I just want to kind of clarify for everybody watching, what does it take to implement AI customer service? Because we hear in headlines, we don't have enough electricity, that we need to build more data centers. What's going on with all this, and so does it involve a new phone system? Does it involve a new CCAS? What are the pieces that you need to have in place before they should call you?
Yeah, that's also a very good question. Like deploying this technology, especially in the enterprise setup, turned out to be pretty complicated, right? And we at Synthflow, we actually have built a very strong team of forward deployed engineers, as we call it internally, that work with our customers to help them deploy this in their existing ecosystem. And there are several components when it comes to existing tech stack and ecosystem. So one of those is the telephony system, as you mentioned, right? And with some major ones, we have native integrations. With other ones, we have the SIP trunking, and we just, if it's elastic, we go and integrate into that. And then there are like other tools they use, right? CRMs, for example, like there could be Salesforce, HubSpot. You have to go and integrate into that. And sometimes even the use cases are so specific. Let's say you work with some healthcare company and they have some additional tools there that you have to go tap into the data, as we call it, right? Where is the knowledge base here, so that you can go. And sometimes you have to do some work to integrate. But in general, Synthflow is built in a way that it's an extremely versatile API that can, in a very short period of time, and we're talking about a few weeks, actually completely integrate into the existing ecosystem. Whereas with the previous technology like NLPs and NLUs, it could take 9 months, 10 months actually to have everything set up.
Okay. Now you probably meet with a lot of prospects, and I imagine in those conversations, sometimes you leave meeting with a prospect with, wow, they're a great fit. And I imagine sometimes you leave with, Synthflow is not for this customer. Can you give us an idea of what makes a good prospect for you?
Absolutely. Yeah. So in the beginning, when we launched our product, we were we targeted a bit broader audience. But then very quickly we realized, okay, actually the product we're building is for contact centers. And when I say contact center, I mean that in a broader sense, right? It could be a standalone contact center. Good examples are some very large BPOs and like contact centers and main business companies. But there are also many existing Fortune 2000 companies that have in-house contact centers. Sometimes basically, my definition of that is when there is a room with a certain number of agents and the agent supervisor who looks at the broader numbers, etc. That's how I define the contact center in this context. And everywhere where there is a contact center with human agents, this solution is relevant for because this can.
So can you narrow that down?
Yeah.
So you're going to use the ACD basically as a starting point, but it could be a small one. It could be a big one. You don't really care if it's there must be a sweet spot. You can.
Yeah, definitely. So so I would say at least companies with 25, 50 plus agents is relevant for us, because what we realize at this stage of the technology and the AI is that we have to work closely with our customers, and we do. And that's also like one differentiation we have from many other tools out there, is that we actually commit resources working with our customers. And the call volume has to make sense. And generally, our internal guideline is 20,000 calls per month. That's roughly how we look at this. And the industries were very versatile. It could be financial institutions, insurance, healthcare, and the type of contact center is also for us. We are agnostic there. It could be like inbound or outbound.
And then you mentioned at the beginning, when you talk about contact center, you mentioned a room full of agents. I'm a big advocate of getting rid of those rooms and sending all the agents home or working from home. There's nothing physical about your product, right?
It's on the cloud basically, and there are two ways to deploy it: either with our no-code interface, build the agents and launch, or via an API.
Okay, so what you're telling us, and no surprise, is that everything is easy, no problem. So I'm going to ask you directly, what's hard? Because let's split this up into two things. I want to know what's hard for you as a vendor, and so what's on your roadmap, what's keeping you up at night as a CEO in a rapidly changing industry, and then I also want to know what's hard for your customers when they begin to implement. And so you can take either one of those first, but what's hard?
Mm-hmm. So generally, there are two challenges to solve for each company adopting AI contact center. One part is actually setting up the agent itself, and that includes connecting knowledge base, prompting the agents, or with the conversational graphs, as we call it, right? Create the patterns that AI has to follow, and then even create the custom actions, right? Because AI is only useful when it does a task, and there could be appointment scheduling. Sometimes you create a custom action. Sometimes it's sending an SMS. There are different various, and that part is one challenge. And we have solved it with our no-code layer, easily creating these agents. And then there is the second part of the challenge, is how do I embed this solution, Synthflow, into my current existing tech stack ecosystem so that it plays very nicely with other tools, right? With telephony system, with CRMs, etc. So the first part we have solved through our product, and we are soon launching actually a framework called Bell. I can deep dive on that a bit later, that almost de-risks completely the deployment of the agents, and I would say to a very high degree solves the problem of creating, I would say, deterministic agents that do exactly the task that you want to do. But the second part, as I mentioned earlier, we have very strong forward deployed engineering team, and we work closely with our customers during that few weeks just to make sure that we integrate in properly so that Synthflow plays nicely with other tools there. And so you can create all this vast array of use cases.
And what keeps you up at night?
Yeah. So right now, if you asked me this question 1 year ago, like in 2024, my answer would be, will voice AI actually work? Because because to be very transparent, and that's a common knowledge, we crossed the chasm of voice AI, like the conversational part, this year. In 2025, early 2025, the industry crossed the chasm because everyone realized, okay, it works, right? Because this orchestration of text to speech, like so the demos were nice, but the question was, can you actually make this reliable on the scale? Can you solve all these reliability problems and stability? And no one was sure. And also, like, will humans actually go for this technology, or it will remain as a toy out there for everyone to look at? We crossed that chasm, so one fear less this year. I would say the second part that I am really thinking a lot nowadays is the long format. Right now, voice AI is very good for short format. Generally, I would say
we hear that a lot. We hear that AI, particularly what you're describing, is good for the routine type of questions and services that a contact center might provide. But so you're talking about getting the next level of that to a little more complex stuff?
Exactly. So as you mentioned, the short format is like appointment schedule. Generally, these calls are a few minutes long, like at most. And the task is very specified, right? The outcome is very specific. So you just know what you build, and you can expect some outcome there. But then there are also like long format conversation, right? For example, especially when things go into more like emotional space, where human component becomes more and more important. This is where I think the jury is still outstanding, right, on this to see how this will develop, right? I mean, the GPT-5 model came. I think it's great, but I think there were also some voices that said it was a bit underwhelming, given we were on this trajectory to get to AGI, right? So this we will see kind of what type of chasm we will cross next year on this. But so long format is still not very clear yet. Yeah.
Okay. Let's talk about these, because the models keep changing. You cannot talk to a customer about AI without getting some sort of inevitable question about security. And the general response, and I've been through a lot of these conversations from the vendor, from the provider, companies like yours, is we're compliant, don't worry about it, everything's fine. So let's go a little deeper than that. What do you think the customer is really asking, and what is the real answer that why you're confident that security is not a concern? I didn't even ask you if security is a concern, because I know you're going to say it's not a concern. So why are you confident that security is not a concern?
Yeah. No, this is actually a very important question. It is a topic in our space. Actually, when I started in this space, it landed very quickly on my list of priorities, because when you spend time with 6 companies in this space, you realize how important it is. And it's not only data, it's also like vendors and sub-processing. So to answer your question, I would split the customer base into 2 groups. One being in the US or North America, and the other one in Europe, because these are like very different, I would say, political and regulatory landscapes. So
I'm going to suggest your groups are wrong. I'm going to suggest that your groups are Europe and everywhere else.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
Agree. Yeah, that's actually a very good definition. And so there are 2 concerns that companies have with AI, right? So I would say actually 3 concerns. So one are generally the hallucinations, which is a technical problem, but it falls actually partly into like regulatory compliance bucket, because what if AI says something, the guardrails, right? So what if it says something or goes off track and causes a damage to the company? What if it issues an interest on mortgage or promises some or reveals some healthcare data that it shouldn't, right? So this is one concern. The second concern that companies have is generally it's my data, right? My data, and in some industries, data is super valuable. How do you make sure that it doesn't leave the place it shouldn't live, right? Because also calls are getting recorded, and then with HIPAA compliance, you have to adhere so that you can have this button that they don't get recorded. So we underwent all these compliances, so I know the details there. And then the third concern is, I would say, is like geo-regulation. So for example, if you're in Europe, but your cloud basically, right, like the hosting even of the sub processors, this is basically how I call it, like level 2 compliance, deeper, is but the sub processors are still there, or the data getting splitted between the servers and continents. It's like sometimes you just can't sign that as a company. You can't go for it because you're against the regulation. You get fined, and no basically infosec or procurement will approve that for a European company, right? So these are like the main 3 challenges I see. So very early on, we passed basically HIPAA compliance, SOC 2 Type 2 compliance, and then GDPR. These are like the keys. And as a stage 2 for our company, after we raised our 20 million Series A, we invested significant resources in actually splitting the data hosting, right? Splitting data hosting, splitting the sub-processors. And we also, for our enterprise customers, we also offer the on-prem services, which of course solves a bunch of problems, right? And you can have that in Latin America or US, right? So that bringing them on-prem is very important for some customers. So you just have, so you can undergo all these compliances, but I think you also as a company have to have that into your DNA and into your processes. And this is what we have been doing basically all the time. And invest, it's expensive, but you have to do it if you're in this business. Yeah.
Okay. All right. This is a very hard one. This is a very hard one. I obviously, without a particular implementation or a specific implementation, it's very hard to discuss ROI. But I think that this gets bantered about in the wrong way. And so I want to ask you first. There's the return part, and then there's the investment part. So the investment part, I'm assuming, with Synthflow is mostly a usage-based type of model. So to get your money back, your return on an investment, it doesn't necessarily require a whole lot, because it's just, you can do a pilot, you can do whatever. So the real question here then is, what is the kinds of returns that people get? Are they reducing staff? Are they increasing productivity? What are the things that they should be looking for in their return? And then what is the time frame that it takes to realize a positive return on investment?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a very good, but also a very hard,
ambiguous
question. No, it is a very good question, because so it depends, because it has like several components, right? So the 2 most important components for measuring ROE is, first of all, how fast can I actually deploy this technology, right? Adopt at my organization, deploy, embed it into ecosystem so I can go live. So this is step 1 that can actually delay this. But many companies, I think they have realized, okay, we actually have to allocate budgets also for pilots, right? Because AI is an investment. I'm not gonna invest it today and tomorrow I have that. Although the whole idea of Synthflow compared to everything else is that you will have this tomorrow, and by tomorrow I mean few weeks, right, compared to months. So you should be able, and our customers do that actually very quickly. They can go, and we are releasing this Bell framework, which is actually helps you simulate and test everything before actually going live. So you can already see a lot of results there, which is like, and we have been working very hard on this for the past 4 months, and we're very proud to release this soon. But that's kind of the idea, right? So first part, and then assuming everything went well, it's integrated, no hiccups, and then the customer goes live. Now, how do you measure the ROE? And I would say it's very different from company to company. To give you one example, we have one healthcare company, and what they did, I think they were measuring the deflection rate, if I'm not mistaken. I need to check details. But
Yep.
and they had internal basically benchmarks for that rate. And if I'm not mistaken, it was around 20% or something, and with humans. And they said, even if it's 1% better than this, our internal benchmark, what we have seen in the past, we're gonna switch to this technology. So it was a very, very clear KPIs that they wanted to achieve. It took them, I think, several months to get there because they were constantly iterating, and there were also like commercial aspects there for the customer. But after 6 months, or how many months when they started, they actually got this consistently. They would measure it on a week-on-week basis, and they would consistently get that benchmark, which was surprisingly was not like 10 times better. I think their internal human benchmark was 20, and let's say assuming they were getting like 25, right? Which shows like interesting, like AI is getting close, like similar, it behaves similar to humans. It's just a bit more efficient in many cases. And of course, there is the cost component, right? That if AI can do that, why would you put so many humans on this task when humans have this talent of creativity and can work on more high return things rather than picking up the first line of phone and deflecting unnecessary calls? And this is, for example, what we saw in healthcare. Another company, let's say, can have a bit different, right? It could be the average resolution time or the customer satisfaction score, which is like you can instruct the AI to always do a short survey at the end of the call, right? So whatever the KPI, I think it's very important for companies, and that's what we advise our customers to get into this with the predefined expectations and KPIs, so that you can really have tangible. And then once you have that first result, you can start building up a business case internally at the company, so that you can already allocate budgets for scalable deployments.
It's interesting because we tend to compare it to the status quo, the new thing to the status quo, but you actually bring some new features in that they couldn't do before, and that doesn't get brought up enough. And you didn't even bring it up, and so I just want to touch on this for one of the big things that it's hard to put in the ROI calculation, but the idea that if there's a sudden increase in calls. I'm thinking about when the president was talking about Tylenol. I'm sure that their switchboard lit up, right? So you have the sudden increase in calls that you're actually, you cannot handle that at all with traditional tools, but you can with a solution like yours.
Absolutely, I think that part for many customers, it's like the obvious part. I think that's also the reason. Like 24/7 AI, right? AI never gets tired. AI never gets angry. AI never gets sad.
Yeah.
So all this benefit, I think that's exactly the reason why there is such a high demand for this technology and such.
But it gets dropped in the ROI conversation. That's the point I was trying to make.
Exactly.
We know AI does all this stuff, no coffee breaks, etc. But for some reason that doesn't show up in the because the coffee breaks aren't in the status quo math. And so, but anyway, okay. So you've shared a little bit of ROI for your customers. Now you are a founder, CEO of a young private company, and you have to show results too. Not necessarily ROI, but you've got to show growth and successes. You are a private company. I've tried to find your revenue. No one will tell me your revenue. So, so what do you convey publicly to indicate your success?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. So when we launched our product in early 2024, basically in the first year we grew 15x our revenue, and this year we continue that very fast growth, and we reached to a point where we're processing millions of calls every month. And And these are like,
let me get you this. Let me just make sure I got that right.
yes,
You're less than 3 years old, and you're already processing millions of calls on a monthly. Okay, all right, just make sure I got that.
Yes, yes, yes. We do that, and it's a lot. It's a lot. And to give also like a bit a background on this, when we reached that volume, I think last year we passed the first million, right? And now we do several per month. We actually got to the point where we reached the limits of our architecture last year. So we were not prepared to scale this to that volume. And then we ended up working and investing a ton of money, and we went and raised our Series A basically to start building everything around the infrastructure and hiring tech team. And we're over 50 people at this stage, and to be able to process and scale that. And then we succeeded in that part, but it's an ongoing journey, right? It's several millions today, maybe tens of millions tomorrow. So it's a very fast moving space. That's where we are at this point.
That's great. Do you anticipate doing another fundraising round, or where?
So we recently closed our Series A, which was in June. So
You're good for a little bit.
Exactly. I don't think it makes sense to do it right now, but I mean, it depends, right? If we go fast, we face new challenges that we hadn't accounted for, right? For example, after the seed round, we had that scalability topic, and then we realized, oh, this is very expensive, right? And the compliances, etc. And that was actually reason to raise that round. And we'll see. Well, we will land soon, and based on that, we'll make the decisions about the next round.
So the challenge here, and I'm not even running the company, but as an analyst in the industry, there's a new AI company every week, and it takes a half-hour conversation just to figure out what they do, because everyone just says they're an AI company, as we touched on earlier. So how do you A, grow, and B, differentiate with so much competition and emerging dynamic competition?
Yeah, I completely agree with you. I think generally AI is very noisy. It's very similar and to probably .com times where a lot of things were happening. And I think that's positive. It's net positive for the society and for the world, because during these phases, right, even though it may seem a hype, etc., but infrastructures are being built right now. It was similar. Many companies like were hyped and went bust during .com, but we ended up with an worldwide internet infrastructure, right? And this is what's happening right now. So from our perspective particularly, so because we're already like 3 years in this space, we learned to distinguish basically noise from value, which is a very important skill. It comes with experience and time. And because we are very focused on what we do, we are an AI contact center on the phone, and we offer very specific type of product, right? I just mentioned this Bell framework. We build our telephony, and we're gonna, over time, we're getting more and more specialized in this area. We offer forward deployed engineers to our customers, and all we care at this stage are our customers. Whether we will grow a bit faster or a bit slower over time, because the market is noisy, and it doesn't matter, honestly, for us. All we want is to have great customers, serve them, and when the noise settles, the value will speak for itself. This has been our approach from the very beginning, and that's how we navigate this space.
That's a great response. All right, we're going to wrap this up with one final question. Now, let's look a little more into the future. We've been talking a lot about today and what you're doing today. How will voice AI reshape CX, reshape industries, and which industries do you think will be the big winners?
Yeah, it's a difficult question to answer, because I think everyone, even like the gurus, learned in the last 3 years that most predictions go wrong. No one knows how this will shape up. But I see, for example, like massive, so the contact center, like the BPOs, this is obvious. Like this is something that I would say almost 100% obvious. They are getting disrupted. So it's like adapt or die, if I can put it this way. Because ultimately either you have that technology, right, and you probably don't want to build every item in-house, so you want to partner up with the companies that you can get the API and basically have and have this symbiosis of humans and AI augmenting humans. And I think the BPOs who adopt that strategy, they can become powerhouses because they have human-based operations. If they can also merge and find this interesting combination of AI and humans, and AI is not going to replace humans for decades. It's going to there's going to be some interesting mix, similar as like we work with computers now. And if they can actually get there where they find this interesting combination, they can thrive. Otherwise, it's going to be very difficult. So all other industries will do this similar, right? The most obvious ones are insurance, healthcare, financial institutions, everywhere where there is a like recurring business need to conversate with customers. We'll go for it. Everything else, we will see how this plays out, but they're, I would say, a bit slower to catch up. Yeah, and maybe I would put also retail in the first bucket. Yeah.
Well, fantastic. I think I think those were great responses, and I really enjoyed talking to you. Any parting words of wisdom for anybody watching something I didn't ask that you were hoping that you wanted to say?
Yeah. So also thank you very much for having me here. It was a pleasure. It's always interesting to have a conversation about this topic because there's so much noise. And my final remark is that the most important thing, and I said that also because I follow that myself as a founder, is to spend some time to educate the teams, yourselves, to distinguish between noise and value, because value is there's a lot of money in AI, a lot of money is being invested. It would be a shame actually for that money to get lost, right? And the value is if some things are basically too simple, too shallow, right? So no one has changed the rules of the business, basically. So there should be always cautious, right? And I said we work very closely with our customers, and it takes time and effort actually to bring that ROI to the customers, like I said, that example. And I think companies should do their due diligence and go after the value rather than get distracted by the noise. That's probably my
great advice. All right. Well, none of this was noise. This was great content because of guests like yourself. So thank you for watching. Dave Michaels, and I'm going to get this last name right. It's Hakob Astabatsyan. Is that nailed it? All right. Yeah. All right. Perfect. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.